Hey guys, welcome back to the $1 Million Marketing Podcast. Today, I am joined by someone who shares a deep passion, like I do, for faith, family, and business. This is Eddy Miranda, and he's the founder of Deem Marketing. So, Eddie's been in the marketing industry for over 10 years, same as me, which is awesome, helping entrepreneurs and businesses master their ads, their funnels, and their offers. So, today, we're going to dive into his journey and unpack on all the things about how he manages to align his personal values with his professional success and kind of touch on some of those professional successes as well. So, Eddy, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you, Jody. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. All right. So let's start with your journey.
Mm,
You've been in business for over 10 years doing this online marketing thing. Can you
yeah,
share a bit about like how you got started in marketing and like what inspired you to focus on ads, funnels, and offers?
it's funny. Before I even really got into marketing, I was like I would say like almost marketing hemisphere where I was doing like graphic design. That's like one of my
Mm,
first skills that I kind of learned. Then I went into like web development and things like that. And then through all of that learning process and trying to do all my own things, I started working for a church here locally in Miami called Calvary Kendall, where I really start homing in down on corporate branding.
ah,
And we start learning about messaging and how that affects people and how that drives people, right? So from there I started my own business. I actually started two businesses when I left the church. One was Deem Design Studios, which later converted into Deem Marketing.
mhm,
With Deem Design Studios, I was working with like Fortune 500 companies, building websites, sales processes, things like that. Worked with a lot of health or fitness kind of brands, like fitness equipment or fitness food, or like food and like brownies
mhm,
and things like that. It's like so I helped them with their branding, but I also helped them with like email marketing and social media marketing and everything to try to help them generate more revenue for the business. In the meantime of me doing that, I started another project called Men's Physique News, which I learned how to do organic marketing as
ah,
much as possible, which was a news feed for the men's physique division in pro bodybuilding. And that grew to about 35,000 followers within 6 to 8 months. Like by the time that I got to the Mr. Olympia, it was already widely known and things like that. So utilized that and like built both those businesses. But back in 2019, where I really started getting into marketing was that we had just finished coming back from California because I went to California in order to scale the Men's Physique News brand, because I felt in Miami there weren't as many competitors. So I'm like, let's go to the home where everybody's at, California. California is really expensive, so we decided to come back to Miami after having a kid.
mhm,
And basically, in the beginning of 2019, I was like, you know what, let me just venture out into something bigger, right? So I started learning about drop shipping. So not only building Shopify stores, which I already had a background in, started learning how to run Facebook ads. And in the time, my wife was actually getting into network marketing. She was working for a company. I'm like, you know what, we're going to do something different when it comes to what it is that you're doing there,
mhm,
and we're going to start building funnels. So I started researching about funnels, listening to Steve Larson, because he was in MLM space, and start learning how to build funnels. So then
mhm,
that's where I really started progressing into learning about all that stuff, started building funnels for other people, book funnels, started running ads for people. And that's where I started getting my chops in real like conversion attribution kind of marketing, is just piggybacking off of what I was learning, not only from the Shopify stores and drop shipping stores that I was doing, but also helping my wife with trying to find a different way in order to get more prospects and more customers into her business, and utilize that more into the other network marketing business that she went into. And then with all those skill sets, had the opportunity to work with Grant Cardone. I got hired there as a creative ad specialist, but then I started going up in the ranks. Like people started seeing my skill sets because of everything I started doing. Went to managing the traffic team to later on being his digital marketing manager for real estate. And then
wow.
since then, I've worked for a couple other companies doing the same thing, just helping them with their marketing, utilizing all my skills so that they could
Mhm.
generate more revenue.
Mhm, mhm. So, all right, I'm gonna piggyback on that of like you've worked with many clients over the years, right? So can
Yep.
you share one of your favorite success stories or like case studies and how like you specifically helped that client achieve some really breakthrough results?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my greatest successes was and I don't want to use like Grant and like anchor on that because I did have a lot of success on that. But there was this one particular client. We did like a children's book funnel.
Mm,
And I remember working with that client. And what we ended up doing is like we ended up launching this funnel once. And this was like pre 2020 when iOS 14 came on and the attributions and the conversions were super, super cheap. We were getting like
mhm,
$5 to $6 a sale on a book funnel that had a lot of hard cost on it. And we decided like, okay, let's put it on pause. He sold out of the books. Like we couldn't keep the books on the shelves anymore. Like we sold out the books. He's like, hey, let's just put this on pause. But then once we were like, hey, let's restart this. I'm like, let's re-engineer your entire book funnel because you had too much hard cost on there. And what we ended up doing is that we ended up putting a couple courses in there, added a few more things into his actual offer stack when it came to the actual book itself, reran the ads, and we were breaking even and even scaling that. And I think that that was a highly
mm,
successful one because the client
mhm.
was like, I didn't think that this was possible. I didn't think that I could get these many people to buy this book, but it was one of those that we sold thousands and thousands of copy of a children's book that all we did was just run ads to it and had a book funnel and made sure that we were breaking even on it. Um, and so that's like just one case study that I think is really, really impactful with like kind of things that I did. If we want to go into like bigger name clients like Grant Cardone, what I did was that I actually helped out with his webinar and his book funnel. So once I got in charge of his particular department for real estate, started working on his book funnel because we were all talking about it and it was like, man, we could do so much better with this thing. Like we weren't
Mhm,
breaking even, we were actually
mhm.
losing money. And I was like, let me just re-engineer. I know the tweaks that we kind of do on this book funnel, going back to what I learned from the other client. And what we ended up doing is that we rebuilt it, redid the offer stack, redid all the upsells behind it, and started throwing ads at it. We did have an improvement on it, but I also saw another problem. His webinar was also not profitable as well. So I
Mhm.
was like, let's make some switches on here. Like I saw the old media buyer, they were running the ads for leads. I was like, what if we run these ads as a purchase? Nobody could give me a straight
Ah,
answer. Nobody was like, hey, run ads as leads or as purchase. Which one is better? Nobody could give me an answer. I'm like, let me just test it. I
test it.
did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just test it, right? I did that and we started becoming profitable on that funnel. And then the final piece to it was like, okay, how can we finally make this book funnel profitable? And we stuck it in as a retargeting off of that webinar. Now both things became
Ooh.
profitable. And now we were able to scale that and started bringing in money into the actual niche that we were working in and being able to scale it. So those
Yeah.
are like two case studies that I feel like they're really, really impactful with things that I've done.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing, like the biggest takeaway for me from that is always be willing to test and like
Yep.
ask like what's next? What can we try next? How can we
Yep.
optimize this further? Because even if it was doing okay, okay doesn't mean that it's fully optimized or the best it's
Correct.
ever going to get. And so always be willing to like look for something to test, such as in a webinar funnel, optimizing for purchase instead of just those front end leads. You probably, I'm going to guess, paid a little bit more for your cost per lead, but they were higher intent leads and they ended up purchasing.
Yeah. So we were running about like 800 leads a day
Yeah.
on the old way. The new way, we were getting 400 leads a day. Now, I can't tell you the figures, but I can at least tell you the number of sales that we were getting on those. And on the old way, we were getting 5 to maybe 8 sales a day. Like we
Hmm.
were really, really struggling to make that profitable.
Yeah.
And then once we made the switch, we were hitting anywhere from 10 to 15 sales a day.
Yeah.
So not only were we spending less money on ads, but we were coming out winning because we were actually getting more customers per day coming through there and whipping out their wallet and wanting to get the course that he was pitching on that webinar.
Yeah. That's a huge takeaway and a huge area of opportunity for anybody who's running a webinar funnel that's selling something on the back end, right? Have
Yeah.
you ever tried that with a webinar that leads to like an application or a booked call, like optimizing the webinar front end for the schedule or application?
Yeah, it really depends. My theory on this is always what's the final intent of the funnel,
Yeah.
right? So if you're going to be running a webinar with a book a call, then don't run it as leads, run it as a schedule. If
Hmm.
you're going to be running a webinar as a direct purchase, run it as a purchase, not as a lead. Because a lot of people always think that first action is the action that they need to be optimizing for, right? Consider like an e-com store. You're not going to be optimizing for add the carts, right? You're going to want to optimize for purchase
Yeah.
at the end of the day, because that is the final intent. That is the final thing that they do once they finish with the entire process of going through that. So you
Yeah.
have to consider a funnel the same way too, right? And I know a lot of people's like, oh, well, I've done like tripwire funnels. I'm like, that's great. I've done tripwire funnels and I run it for leads and they were never profitable. I start running it for purchase and then they started becoming breaking even,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
always go with the final intent of whatever campaign you're trying to run. If it's a schedule, don't optimize for leads, go for schedule. If it's a
Yeah.
purchase, don't optimize for lead, go for the actual purchase
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Awesome. So, being that you are an expert in ads, funnels, offers, what's a marketing trend that you see sort of dominating this year in 2024 and maybe even upcoming in 2025? And how should businesses be preparing for that?
Honestly, the thing that I've been seeing a lot of lately is everybody going back to low ticket or self-liquidating funnel,
Ooh.
right? And I've actually utilized that a lot with a lot of the clients that I've been able to work with. Is, for instance, like I was able to work for Brandon Turner for a little while. And one of the things that we started doing in order to start making, not only getting higher quality leads, but start getting more sales for his video sales letter funnels, that we ended up putting a self-liquidating offer first
Mm.
and utilizing that in order to get the buyers in and then retargeting them into a VSL. So the things that I've been seeing a lot lately is everybody's either going for a low ticket thing like a self-liquidating offer, or they're probably trying to get people into a low ticket reoccurring community as well, right? So
Mhm.
those are like two things that I'm really seeing in like today's world that everybody's trying to go for, is either the low ticket thing or a low ticket community that sends them into a higher ticket coaching program or a higher ticket program, whatever the case may be.
Okay. What is your preference, evergreen or live launches?
Hmm. You
Like
can't.
what brings you energy? What do you prefer?
Well,
Forget
the
about
thing.
results.
I honestly evergreen. The thing is, you would use your live launches to test it out.
Mhm.
But the thing is like you only have such a short window, right? To test, to optimize, to see how the ads are doing. You only have about a 2 week span. You really have like a week, right?
Mhm.
And that's not enough time for you to figure out if messaging is right. So you have to run that live webinar or that live challenge every single week in order to see how it works. But once you nail that down, switching it to evergreen is where it's at. Like you want
Yeah.
that the consistent sales. You want to be able to get yourself out of doing these live challenges or these live webinars all the time, because that gets draining after a while.
Mhm.
Now, what you can do is that once you already figure out if your live webinar works, switch it to evergreen, but then you could test it twice a year and like run a new live webinar twice a year and then
Yeah.
see if it outperforms the current one you have. If not,
Yeah.
if it does, then just replace it. That
Yeah.
was something that Grant really did, is like once he nailed his live webinar, that went on repeat, that went to evergreen, but then he would still do at least one or two live webinars a year to see if it will hit better than it did before. And if it did, then we'll swap it out and have that one as the new one.
Yeah, yeah. I have a client who nails her live webinar, loves it. It's fantastic. Like it brings her a lot of energy to show up on a live webinar and have people,
Mm,
live in the room with her. And so, when she took a pause for the summer, she did not want to go evergreen. And I was like,
mm.
"Oh, you're leaving so much money on the table,"
Yes,
because
it's
like I'm like
consistent.
it was consistent. We were spending like $1,500 a week per webinar and getting like 400 people registered, and then she was making like 8 grand on the web, which isn't like that's not huge. It's not. We're not even scaling at that point, but that's where she was comfortable. And I
Yeah.
was like, what if we just tried it? Like, wouldn't you want to make 8 grand a week while you're gardening?
Yeah,
Like
like
I
for
would.
like what about like 8 grand a day? Like you could literally
Right.
like you could literally do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
because the thing is with a live, your sales are only tentative based off of the day that you actually launch it, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, you could have 400 signups, 50% of those people show up, 200 people show up to the webinar. You got 10%, 20 people show up, you make about, let's say it's $1,000, you make 20 grand, right?
Mhm.
But like, remember what I was said at the beginning, like we were able to get grant 10 to 15 sales a day. That's $1,000 per sale. So we were making
Yeah.
10K to 15K a day on his evergreen webinar. So
Yeah.
wouldn't you want that better than, hey, every single Thursday I have to go live and it's only on
Yeah.
this day that I make the 15 grand, right? But you can make that every single freaking day if you wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I think it's not that people like hate money when they decide not to do that. But I think that they don't fully realize the potential there, right? Like
Yeah.
the desire for this particular client, the desire to show up live and have that energy was so huge. And to like, this is how I want to represent my brand as being live on this webinar, that it like that mindset shift, it wasn't there in order
Yeah.
to say like I can release that in order to make more money, and maybe even still once a month do it live so that I get that
Yeah.
energy from that,
Yeah.
and show up that way for my audience. But it is what it is. It's not my business, but and then speaking about like launches too, the other big thing with live launches, it is such a short window, but it's
Yep.
also like there's such a huge risk tolerance that you're taking, right? Because
Yep.
it's not
Yeah.
going like webinar ad to sale pretty quickly. Like you're getting leads for a live event that's happening, in 10 days. And so you're just money, 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 money out
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
many days, and then like hoping your webinar is going to convert. And so,
Yep.
there's risks and benefits to all of it, but essentially like when I'm talking with potential new clients or whatever, we always talk about risk tolerance. You have to understand like what's your budget. Don't go take out a second mortgage in order to see if this live launch is going to work. Like that's a bad decision.
Yeah.
But also, you do need to be able to take some risks and have some belief in what you do using reasonable projections, to figure out like, is this reasonably going to be productive or profitable, right?
Yep.
All right, so I want to shift
Absolutely.
a little bit here. Conversations leading up to this recording, we talked about how we're aligned in our faith and how we think
Mhm.
about things. So, how do you practically incorporate your faith into your like decision making as a marketer or a business leader?
Well, I mean, the thing is when it comes to my faith, like God's like spoken to me in a lot of different areas, right? Like he's the one that told me to like go on my own, and I've taken that leap, right? He even knew how I was going to be handling, my family and everything like that and my business before I even got into it. So I take it
Mm,
very seriously when it comes to
mhm,
how God is in my life and how I pursue things, right? So
mhm.
I always have to see if when I'm going into an opportunity, is it about the money or is this a right fit for me, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I was just in church on Sunday and the conversation or the sermon was about like greed. Like how does greed hold you in your decisions? Like do you just want it for the money or do you want it because this is something that's going to impact or something that's going to push you
Mhm,
forward? So I always got to look at it in that aspect, right? Because like even when I worked for the church, like yeah, I was broke. Like I lived in efficiencies. I didn't make much money, but I stayed there for 5 years because I was so passionate about, right?
mhm,
So I always have to rely on God. Is this something that I'm passionate about? Is this something that's going to align with me,
mhm,
with what I want to be able to achieve? Or is this just something that's just like, I need the money right now, or, because I just need to be financially stable, right? And usually God really like knocks on my heart and like kicks me over and is like, well, you chose the wrong way. Well, let me take this away from you now. And now you have to get
yeah.
realigned. Right. So yeah, I really focus on if this really aligns, if this is my passion, if this is where I need to go, because God will tell me otherwise, like, hey, that's the wrong move. I'm going to take it away from you again, and you need to refocus and focus on what it is that you
Mm,
need to do. So yeah, it's a huge aspect in my life, and basically, it's something that you're always trying to figure out, right? Like you're never 100% certain, right? You're like, I think I could do this move, but you take that move, and then he's like, nope, I'm taking it away. You're realigning,
Yeah.
So yeah, like he plays a huge factor. And sometimes we make those mistakes. Sometimes
Hmm.
we end up making those choices, but he's always going to put you back into your place of where you need to be in order to get
I
realigned.
so resonate with that. I took on a client last year that I knew that we didn't align um personally, like
Yeah.
morally, ethically. There was a lot of things that I knew that we didn't align on. And I did it anyways because I was like, I know I can help you. Like, I like what you're selling. I like what you're doing, but I know that we don't personally align, but it'll be
Yeah.
okay. Like, it'll be okay. God did not bless that. I will just say God did not bless that. And this client ended up like even after, signing the contract, all of the deliverables were handed over and I got good feedback. 2 days before Christmas, she did a chargeback for $9,000. Like every single cent that she
Wow.
had paid me, she charged back. And I was like, okay, God, like I'm listening. I will stop taking on clients that I don't like align with. Like I'm not saying you have to declare that you're voting for Trump in order to work with me, but
Yeah.
I do want to at least align ethically and morally because if you
Yep.
don't have integrity, then I can't work with you. And there are certain red flags that I ignored in like onboarding this client where I should have been like, ooh, we got to turn this ship around and like not do this. The
Yeah.
other story I want to say is when we bought our house, this house here, it was totally like our hands were open. I was like, okay, God, we've been renting for 10 years. And if this is what you want for us, like, make it easy. Make it easy because I am scared. It feels like a huge commitment. Like it's a huge house, 9 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. We got a
Wow.
wonderful deal on it, but also like that's a huge commitment going from like a rent that's month to month and we can pull out at any time and go, move somewhere else or do whatever
Yeah.
to a mortgage. And it was a huge down payment and all like the payment scared me. All the things scared me. And I was like, God, make it easy, calm my heart, give me peace about this. And like just make it so that I'm sure. And wouldn't you know, some referrals came in. And so then I, since I'm booking out multiple months in a contract, I had that confirmation that like, okay, we're good.
You can do
Like
it.
this
Yeah.
is definitely good. And then silly me, I was like, okay, but God, like I hear you. And yes, I feel comfortable and confident, but like, could you just do me one more favor? Could you just make it really sure for me that this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I mean, seriously, it's really hard to know. Like, are things falling into
Yeah.
place because
Yeah.
this is what God's will is, or are things falling into place because, like, I'm good at selling? Like, what is it? Right? Like, so then I had two other clients where I knew I was going to be in the process of moving, like if I was buying this house. So I two other people that said like I'm going to hire you, but I'll be ready in 2 months and I'm going to put a deposit down. And I was like, "Oh."
Oh wow.
So God was
Nice.
like, "Yes, I'm going to give you all of this and I'm going to give you this that just ensures that those future months are also taken care of." And I was just absolutely blown away at how that all worked out. So just a really cool way that like God's faithfulness showed up in my life. All right, I want to talk one more side of personal things where you and I align, and it's not politics, but we do align
Oh,
here.
although we
We
could
do
talk about
align.
that.
We definitely could. It might have to be a separate episode because I feel like we could talk about it for a long time. Politics and like, tinfoil hat things. So
All about
I know, me
it.
too, which is hilarious. So, but I do know that you're a biohacker. Okay. And that
Yes.
speaks my language as well. And I know that that's helped you manage your anxiety. So, can you talk to me about how optimizing your personal health has influenced your success in business?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I actually want to go back a little bit on this because, like, I said, like, I had started a thing called Men's Physique News because I used to be a bodybuilder. And I was like, at that point in time, I was like, all about health, making sure you're eating right, making sure that you're eating clean food, making sure that, you're exercising every single day. And I come to find out that when I was doing all that stuff, I was actually getting pretty sick. Like, and what do I mean by that? Like one year, in fact, it's actually before we moved to California, which was in 2017 and December 2017. I had an issue with a whole lot of stress. and I just finished coming off of a show, so my body was like
Mm,
like trying to get back to normal.
yeah, you're trying to like
And
reverse diet sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like reverse diet, which really didn't work out that much because I ate everything and anything because, once you get off stage, it's like, okay, I'm going to eat all the donuts in the world.
Yeah.
But I had gotten like really sick because I had super high stress, super high anxiety. It was actually at the time my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, had lost her dog, and I
Oh,
couldn't deal with that. So I had like a breakdown that ended me up in urgent care with thrush and shingles. So the
oh no.
stress alone like put me in the hospital. We went to California. I mean, I didn't see my family or anything like that because of it before we left. So no Christmas, no New Year's, no nothing. Went to California, came back, and the stress of the move coming back put me back inside the hospital with Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh.
So
Hmm.
that's twice already that I've had to go because of stress related things.
Yeah.
And, you know, and again, I was bodybuilding at that time. I had done shows, had done everything like that. And again, my body just couldn't handle it. So kept on like training, kept on doing everything like that. Come COVID, where all the junk food started coming in, we couldn't eat healthy, the gyms were closed, everything like that. I find out that I had verticulitis. So I had to rush to the hospital that December, get scans and everything like that. So that's already 3 times that I'm in the hospital because of my health, because of stress related things.
Hmm.
So I couldn't figure it out. Like at the end of the day, no matter what I did, I tried going to holistic, coaches, mental coaches, try to help me with my stress, try to help me with my anxiety, but I was never able to get away from it. Like, let me put it this way. My anxiety was so bad and so stressful that I would wake up every single morning coughing up a lung and literally inside the shower having anxiety and panic attacks like every
Hmm.
single freaking morning. That's how bad it
Hmm.
was for me. So when I started working with Grant, in Grant's office, start learning about Gary Brecka, and he started talking about, hey, if you do this genetic test, you could find out the markers, and you could stop with your anxiety. And I
Oh.
was like, I didn't really pay attention to that until I left, and then I was like, I'm still having anxiety. Even when I was working at Grant's office, every single morning I had anxiety going inside the office, like every single day. I even remember one time, like, I had so much anxiety that I was told to, like, say the numbers of the marketing team, and I had to do an announcement, and I completely babbled through it because of how anxious I was.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, like, once I left there, I'm like, there's something that I have to do with this. So I start seeing Gary on TikTok, out of all places, and he's like, if you're driving down the road on an innocuous day and you get anxiety, it doesn't mean that you really have anxiety. It's because of what you're consuming and the vitamins that you're not taking.
Oh.
So I started experimenting with some of the stuff, start researching some of the vitamins that he was talking about, and things started to get better. And then one of my friends here, like, he owns an IV company, and he's like, hey, I could do that genetic test for you. We just haven't done it for anybody. Like, we want to have it as a product for our clients. I was like, sure, I'll be your guinea pig. I took the
Mhm.
test. He told me exactly the vitamins that I was missing. And
Mm.
I started taking those vitamins and started eliminating certain things out of my food. The major thing that I had to eliminate out of my food was a chemical called folic acid,
Yeah.
which, Jody, of course, if you've been pregnant, you already know that they feed you folic acid every single day of your pregnancy.
Yep.
Well, what that was causing me, that was having me have higher anxiety than what I normally would,
Is it
right?
do you have the MTHFR gene mutation? Was that
Yes. Yes.
okay? I do
Yes.
too. I have
Yeah.
a single I have a single and my 11-year-old has a double mutation. And so we're
Yeah.
just assuming that my husband probably has a single. So we haven't
Yeah.
tested all of us, but like, yeah, super familiar with that and like the folic acid versus folate,
Yeah.
methylfolate and methyl B and all the
Yeah.
things. So you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
So yeah, like, I found out that I had that. I also found out that I had the CompT break
Yep.
as well. Which CompT basically, if you're having a hard time going to sleep. Like you put your head on the pillow and all of a sudden your mind starts racing, which I would have so much insomnia. Like I would literally go to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning, even though I laid on my bed at 10 o'clock at night. Like both those things, I start figuring out what I need to do in order to fix those things. Now,
Yeah.
one, I don't wake up with anxiety anymore. In fact, I have a very like funny story about that because like my wife challenged me on, oh, it's not the food that you're eating or whatever. She was like a total non-believer about it. But it was in January. We were going up to Disney World for my son's birthday. And a few days before the trip, we ended up going to one of our favorite pizza spots called Lucali here in Miami Beach.
Mm,
So amazing pizza. But what ended up happening was that the day after, I woke up an anxious mess. And I was like, okay, it has to be the pizza. Next day, same thing. It takes about 2 to 3 days for you to like, get the folic
mhm.
acid out of your system.
Yeah.
So she's like, no, I don't believe you. Da, da, da. It's not the food. Da, da. I'm like, watch. I'm not going to eat anything. I'm going to be careful about what I eat at Disney World, even though that they have junk left and right. It's going to be, I'd rather not eat than eat the food there.
Right.
Right.
And be an anxious
And
mess. Yeah.
then be an anxious mess. And then we start waking up. Like woke up every single morning and she's like, did you see me have anxiety? She's like, no. I'm like, that's the food. Like, that's why I'm taking these vitamins. So ever since then, she became a believer in it.
Mhm.
So now I'm very conscious about what I eat and how I eat it.
Mhm.
But yeah, like now I've tested both my kids. My wife has not been tested. And we try to give them the vitamins. We've been changing our lifestyle, like as far as like we've gotten gluten free because that's just been much easier than to
Yeah.
figure out if this has a specific kind of wheat or not. So like we've
Right.
gone gluten free, we've gone completely organic. We do things like we don't drink tap water anymore. We either filter it to make sure that the fluoride is out of the water, or we go
Yep.
with spring water, Mountain Valley spring water. So we've taken like steps, and how that has transpired into like my business and my everyday life has been like a game changer because like I've never spoken so positive about things. When things
Mhm.
go bad, I don't go into an anxious mess anymore. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, let me clear my head. Let me see what I need to
Yeah.
do versus like, oh my God, like, what am I supposed to do? And I drown myself in like negativity and
Mhm.
self doubt and everything like that. So, mindset wise, it's improved because now I'm able to focus more on my business and the things that I need to because I'm not doubting myself every single step of the way. I'm
Yeah.
not holding myself back, right? So, mental, physical wise, it's been a complete game changer in the fact that like I've learned about this thing, but it's completely changed my outlook on every aspect. Like things go
Yeah.
wrong in my life, and I'm like, let me chill. Even my wife's like, you've been so calm. Like, what happened? Like, you like this just happened, and you're like, fine. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, because now like I have the mental fortitude in order to continue because of the changes that I've done.
I think so many entrepreneurs are missing that key to unlock the next level of what's available to them
Hmm.
by eating just whatever, by consuming alcohol, by, drinking the tap water
Yep.
and, running through McDonald's or whatever. Like, I don't even care if it's McDonald's, it might be Chick-fil-A, and like, go Chick-fil-A, I fully support Chick-fil-A. But the oils that they cook their food in.
Exactly. Yeah, and we've taken the oils out too. Like
Mhm.
even my wife's like, I can't eat any of the new stuff anymore. I'm like, well, what does it have? It's like, oh, sunflower oil. I'm like, don't touch it. What does it have?
Yeah,
Canola oil. Don't touch it. Like
no,
so even with the oils, we stick with avocado oil,
yep,
olive oil, coconut oil, like the natural oils. Even the butter, we start using ghee butter. Like we don't go
yep.
into like anything else. So we're very
Bacon
conscious. Like,
grease bacon grease
yeah,
and lard and all that good
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, seriously, if you think about it, our ancestors did not eat sunflower oil and
Exactly.
canola oil and things like that. Like, no, they did
I,
not. So,
I,
and you're right,
I
like, gluten-free is so much easier than trying to avoid specific
yeah.
things. So, we've been gluten-free for probably 10 years, grain-free for, like, 5. Like, I don't even do corn. I just, like, I don't know. And a lot of the gluten-free stuff is just so full of fillers and all of that that we're
Yeah,
just like, we just avoid it all.
yeah,
So,
yeah. I started learning about corn too, like that. That's like a enhanced product, right? So like not really going into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the change has been like huge in everything. Like we're even like self-conscious, like going to restaurants now.
Hmm.
Like, okay, what do I eat? Like, like how is this fried? Like everything
Yeah.
is just like now more conscious about like what it
Yeah.
is what we eat.
Give me a grilled steak and some steamed vegetables. Like that's about it. We just
Yeah.
we do not go out to eat. Actually, a friend of mine at church on Sunday, he was like, "When's the last time you guys went out on a date like to go get dinner?" And I was like, "A date to get dinner? No, thank you. I don't want to feel like
Yeah.
crap the next day." Like cook me a nice meal at home and take me out to a, an escape room or something like that. I don't I won't even my kids have literally never had a Happy Meal, and I don't feel like that like that's not a bad thing. I am proud
Yeah.
of that. Because it just a friend of mine said, somebody, I don't know whose quote this is, but they said, "You try to convince me that what you put in your stomach doesn't affect your brain, and we'll sit down and have a few beers about it." Right? Because you put alcohol into your stomach
Hmm.
and it affects your brain. There's
Of
no
course.
denying it in that instance. You can immediately see and feel the effects. It's just not that obvious when it comes to, glyphosate and all the other crap that we're consuming unknowingly
Red
because the
40, yellow 5 and 6, like all this stuff. Like,
yep.
and
Yeah.
you also got to consider it too in this way, right? Like the more processed foods we start getting in this country, the more illnesses we started having, right?
Yeah.
Like you look at it in the 80s, like how many people died from cancer or different illnesses, and look at how many people are in hospitals now. Like even after COVID, like I can't book an appointment with a doctor within a week. It has to be 3 months from now because so
Mhm.
many people are rushing to the
They're so
doctor for
sick.
so many, yeah, for so many different illnesses.
Mhm.
And I mean, this we could go into talking about this, but it's all a cycle. It's the food that
Mhm.
we eat that puts us into the hospitals, the medicines that they give us,
Yep.
and that
So they
cycle
can
just
sell us
keeps.
the treatment. They're selling us
Exactly.
the food to make us sick so they can sell us the treatment to fix us, which is actually
Ex-
just still keeping us sick and making us more
ex-
sick. That's the other thing. So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 30 years old. I'm now 43. I've never taken one single medication for it. And especially not the whatever DMARDs and all the other stuff that they wanted me to take, the biologics. And that was when I got the test to see if I had the MTHFR mutation because what I heard from my holistic nutritionist was like, you need to be careful, check for this and make sure that the meds aren't going to, be contraindicated. I was like, what do you mean?
yeah.
And because I was just dipping my toes into this stuff. And I'm so glad she had me do this because it turns out I do have the mutation and the medication that my doctor wanted to prescribe me, I would have either been dead or in complete renal failure by now or
Yeah.
liver failure because they're completely contraindicated in people with the MTHFR mutation. And so I asked my doctor, I was like, do you routinely test for this before you prescribe these medications? And she's like, well, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, shouldn't you? If it's contraindicated, don't you need to know like if somebody has that contraindication? How can you call yourself a doctor and operate under the Hippocratic oath of do no harm if you don't know if you are harming someone or not? Like, make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Okay, we
I
could
mean,
totally go on about this stuff
yeah,
forever and
yeah,
ever and
yeah. Because
ever.
I was going to say another company. I was just going to keep on going. So,
I know. Okay, last thing about biohacking. What was the first like biohacking thing you ever did, or what is like your favorite or like core biohacking thing that you do? For me, it's drinking water. Drinking water and realizing how optimized I can be by drinking 200 ounces of water a day unlocked a new level of thinking for me. And it's my easiest thing to do because I'm in such a habit. I've been doing it for 5 years and I drink on a schedule. So no, I'm not like peeing all day. Everything's on like a schedule. It's so weird. But like I can tell, that I'm operating at a different level because I just simply drink water.
yeah. I mean, I have two, and one I wish that I would continue more often. The first one is actually drinking water, but it's drinking water with salt. And the thing is,
Mm,
when I was in bodybuilding, they were like, "Hey, be careful with the salt. Don't have too much because then you'll bloat." But it's the type of salt that you actually use, right?
Yep.
Like everybody thinks of salt as iodized salt, which only has two minerals in it.
Hmm.
And it's really like, what it really does, it takes the water molecules out of your body,
Yep.
right? So when I heard the concept of like putting salt in your water, I'm like, that seems kind of off for me, because that was the thinking that I had.
Right.
But if you do something like Celtic salt, I wouldn't even go so much to pink Himalayan salt anymore, just because they're not farming it the right way anymore. But Celtic salt is
We are
one, and
deep in the conspiracies.
yeah. And then the other one, which I haven't tried, which is Baja sea salt. But I usually do Celtic salt, and that has like 72 different minerals in it, like 4 or 5 different kinds of magnesium in it, potassium,
Mhm.
like all this stuff that helps put the water back into your molecules, right? So
Yeah.
that's one hack that I've been doing. Another one, which is sounds weird, right? But it's natural, is grounding. And
Oh.
people
Mhm.
usually like, well, I wear shoes all the time. That's how I walk around. But like when your feet is like to the actual earth itself, like walking around on the grass or on the sands, that does a humongous difference. Like just think of your kids. Like you take them to the park, but they have their shoes on. They're still going to be running around. Take your kids to the park without any shoes on, and they're passing out inside the car, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the difference that you see.
Mm.
So because what it does is like we're around like this stuff all day long, electromagnetic fields, like from the screens, from the Wi-Fi, everything like that, and we're not discharging it. But when we put our feet to the ground, then we're discharging all that electromagnetic field out of us. And one,
Mhm.
like I've actually seen it drop my blood pressure. I've actually seen myself like feel better because of it.
Yeah.
And if you incorporate it, like there's been tests on people doing this before and after, right? Like people have taken their blood samples before, and you see their blood's like all clumped up, right? Like, and you wonder like how you get like all these clots, right? It's all clumped up and everything like that. And they'll go grounding for about 10 minutes, come back, take another blood sample, and all of a sudden you see all the bloods like all spread out, not clumped up with each
I
other,
haven't heard
right?
that one before. That's amazing. I do not
Yeah,
do a good job at doing that. I do a
yeah.
good job. Like I wear barefoot shoes. You know, I'm super minimalist, but like taking my shoes and socks off and going outside in the grass.
It's weird.
We
Like,
don't spray, which is good. Like you talk about kids barefoot at a park, like
yeah,
except if they, just put grass fertilizer on or something.
yeah.
Like be careful.
But think about it, right? Like it's a weird concept. Like I'm there like in my front yard with barefoot and everything like that, and people are looking at me like, what is up with this guy? But because it's such a weird concept to take off your shoes on soil and on grass. But like start doing that like on an everyday thing, and you'll start feeling better. Like you'll feel more energized, and start taking your blood pressure. Like you'll see it'll actually start dropping. I did that once with my wife. Like I took my blood pressure before we did some grounding, came back, my blood pressure dropped, right? So like it's a great way to get all that electromagnetic charge out of you, and you can start actually feeling better because of it.
And as entrepreneurs, as marketers, as online business owners, don't we all need a little help with our blood pressure?
Yes, all the time, all the time.
Okay, we're gonna head into like wrapping up, but I want to ask this question. So we're in a similar space, right? So,
Mhm.
but I always believe that there's room for collaboration, that
Yep.
we can support each other no matter what. There are enough clients for everyone. I don't believe in competition. So how can marketing professionals who are technically competitors, right, support each other to create more value for our clients or for our audiences? What do you think about that?
I think it's collaborations like this, right? Like, I was, or I mean, I'm probably going to go through it again, but it's Choose Your Enemy Wisely by Patrick Bet David. And
Mm.
the second step, the first step is, of course, like find yourself, find out who you are, who you want to be. But the second step is choose who your enemy is. And that's not in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to go over there and hit them over the club, like go over to their house and like beat them up. It's who's going to fire you up. And that question was really really hard for me, right?
Mhm.
Because in marketing, I don't see anybody as a competitor. I mean, you could see people as competitors, but I don't see anybody as an enemy, somebody that I want to outbeat, right? And that's why it was so hard for me. And I'm still struggling, like, who is my enemy in marketing, right? Because of the thing is, like, we can learn something from everybody. Marketing
Mhm.
is such a vast space that a different tactic, a different way of viewpoint, a different way of looking at things could help you with a new client, a new campaign that you have to launch. Like,
Mhm.
there's always so many different ways to be
Yeah.
able to do the same thing, right? Like, I
So
think of
many
it like
variables, right?
so
You
many
talk about
variables, right?
split testing. It's like, where do you even start? There's so
Ex-
many variables. So
e-
yeah, when you see how other people are doing it, you can adapt that into your own philosophies and test it and try it. Yeah.
Exactly. I consider this like using Photoshop, right? Like, you could have somebody do the exact same design, but how they got to that design was completely different because they all know
Mm,
different tools, different ways of using it,
yeah.
marquees versus masks, how to utilize layers. Like, there's so many different ways of doing it, and marketing is the same thing, right? So
Yeah.
I think collaboratively in doing things like podcasts or interviews and things like that, just to find out what the other person is doing, I think is a great way to be able to do it, because that's going to grow your audience. That's going to grow, okay, I actually like this person. I see what they're about. I love the way that they speak. I love the
Mhm.
way, they look like they're honest, they're very ethical. And I want to be able to use that person for this new campaign I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, there's higher end people out there. You could look at like Anik Segal, you could look at Grant Cardone, you could look at all, Brad Leah, like all these different people. They don't use the same marketer for different campaigns. They hire different people for different
Mm,
things, right? So
mhm.
there's so much room for everybody, and everybody's methods and tactics are completely different, that I think that it should be a communal thing, and we should be learning as much as we can from each other versus trying to be in spite of what that person is doing.
I love that. I love that. That's a great perspective. Great answer. See, I knew I had you on here for a reason. All right. So, for our listeners who want to connect with you or learn about your services, what is the best way for them to reach out and engage with you or Deem Marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a free Facebook group where I go in live every single week on there, and I share all my tips and tricks of what I've done with clients and how I've been able to get them results, or what I'm kind of going through right now in order to, build a marketing department or scale a specific brand. And you could join my Facebook group, which is called Sales Growth Strategies for High Ticket Coaches. And in order to get there, you just go to my link, which is eddymiranda.com. So it's EDDYMIRANDA.com/group, which is singular, not
Mm.
plural. And you'll, opt in, and you'll be able to join my group. And then you could see all the value that I have to provide.
Love that. I love that. I'm in your Facebook group and I see the value. So you guys should totally go join that group. All right, Eddy, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. You've shared so much wisdom about integrating your faith with your business, your family, and the biohacking stuff, along with some powerful marketing insights. So that's totally valuable to my audience. So thank you so much for joining us. All right, to all of my listeners, be sure to tune in next week as we continue to explore ways that you can scale your business while staying true to your values. Thank you so much for listening to the $1 Million Marketing Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Later, guys.